Thrilled to be with you guys this morning. I absolved poor Justin of needing to do introduction because I know when I do that, I always worry that I screw it up, or you never know whether someone likes a big introduction or a little introduction. And I'm like, okay, here I am. You got me for about 20 minutes. So I'm Janet Thomason, and as some of you know, but not all of you know, I am the Director of National Procurement for Project C.U.R.E. I office here in Houston, even though our organization has its international headquarters in Denver. I've been with the organization for, I guess now about 8 or 9 years, if you count the years when I started as a volunteer, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. But as a basic, the big line to describe what Project C.U.R.E. is we are the world's largest provider of donated medical equipment and supplies into the developing world. What that translates to is we take excess available in this country, things we're no longer using, have upgraded, changed, things that perhaps a hospital used one brand and switched to another, or there's a newer, greater, and better ultrasound machine and everybody needs the newest one. We take those things. We go out in country to any one of the 138 countries where we serve. We assess their need. We check how likely is it that this stuff's going to really get to the hands of the people that need it. Because as you can imagine, when you're operating in the developing world, you're in some of the most corrupt countries that we have on the planet. And we have to make sure that the people who receive it are the appropriate people to receive it. And also we have to be very careful to make sure when it gets to that facility, can they actually use it? Things as fundamental as, will the piece fit through the door? And then you get into the more complicated. Do they have a power supply? What happens when they don't have a power supply? Do they have someone who knows how to use it, etc.? So that's something that we really consider maybe a cornerstone of Project C.U.R.E. is that assessment process to make sure not only is what we are sending getting into the hands of the people that need it, but they actually can use it. You know, we've all seen, as I always say, the CNN expose of there's a hurricane and someone sends, 5,000 pairs of high heels. No, not particularly useful. We want to make sure that we have the proper match. And we've been doing that for 32 years. In any given year, we hit about 50 or 60 of the countries with about anywhere between 160 and 200 cargo containers, those big 40-foot large metal boxes you see driving down the freeway. We do about, let's say, 160 to 200 of those every year. So quite a bit of merchandise leaves Project C.U.R.E. and gets into the hands of people that need it. We are anticipating a banner year, good or bad, this year with Project C.U.R.E. We just ended our fiscal year in the end of May, so we're not even counting our COVID donations in that yet, or in that next year, but we will probably do in the neighborhood of 260 to 300 cargo containers in 2020 to 2021. We just got a profound donation. I think it's the largest donation we've ever received of 22,500 beds. So we'll be sending those out, particularly to countries that need to set up COVID aid hospitals, or hospitals because they don't have a hospital and they're experiencing COVID. So while we're on the topic of COVID, let's talk about what you can do when you're a small organization. Project C.U.R.E., even though we are the largest in the world at doing what we do by volume, we are a very small, dedicated group of staff. We only have 34 paid staff members nationwide and 35,000 volunteers. So as example, Justin brought a group we were just talking about a couple of years ago, year or 2 years ago, and that's how we operate. Nothing would happen if guys like Mike from Michelle's Birthday came and didn't help us out and do our pickups and help in the warehouse and pack cargo containers and do everything we do. And we have a model that works really well. We've never worked in the US because everybody has a focus, right? There are organizations that serve in the US. We are one that serves internationally. One of the biggest reasons why we serve internationally is many of our large donors that I work with as the Director of Procurement have a reason why they don't necessarily want this piece of equipment in the US any longer. Sometimes, truthfully, it's a marketing reason. Many times it's because once you are a company and you're very proud of your product and you say, we have built a better mousetrap, we want the better mousetrap. We don't want you using this one. We're going to get that out of the market. So that's the biggest reason probably why we're restricted out of the US. And like I say, not our thing. There's companies that focus in there. However, you have what happened in March. The US got slammed with COVID. People saw it coming to a certain extent, but not as, I don't think they anticipated the hit to be as hard or as quick. And the nice thing about having 34 people is we immediately did a hard stop and pivoted from international aid to local aid. We just said, you know what, we don't care what it is. We've got supplies in our warehouse, the infamous PPE and ventilators. It's needed. We're going to turn around and we're going to start giving it out. And give it out we did. We had supply drives. We participated and supported supply drives. Here in Houston, we were probably the #1 donor to Harris County Health during this period, bridging that gap of supplies to them. We immediately touched base with them. They have a phenomenal team over there and are still supporting them now on the second go around. You may not have seen, but we did quite a bit with Mayor Turner in alliance with the Houston Astros and C.U.R.E Energy, and came out and did a huge supply drive at the Minute Maid Park. And we continue to do things like support the community testing centers. Yesterday, they asked for 1,000 masks and some hand sanitizers so they could ramp up the testing on the east side. So we continue to be actually aiding here in Houston, although for the most part, we are down to just aiding very rural communities, some of the Native American communities, and wherever there's going to be a hotspot, we're going to pop up again. We donated a little bit over $3 million worth of items across predominantly the 7 states that we're in, but we also went a little bit outside of our borders with some really cool organizations like Angel Air, flying things to remote rural hospitals, and just did some really very fulfilling work with a lot of these organizations, because the supply chain just couldn't handle this immediate need in the market. In conjunction with the problems of how do you get enough masks and what do you do, there was a huge manufacturer recall of 9 million gowns in January. So really bad timing and bad luck on that one, that they were out of the market and everybody was low on gowns to start with. And then when you had to shut down China, all imports got shut down. So there was nothing available. So we had a lot, we sent it out. We actually have shut down our open request line for goods. People have to go directly to our centers now, but we probably Monday will be opening that back up for a little bit more ease in the Houston market. Things happen, like for example, there was an outbreak in the Galleria area, and the executive director of a facility called and she said, they're spiking fevers, I need protective gear. And she just didn't have enough to get her through a crisis level. So we're trying to bridging that gap. Now, so that's our local thing. And we will not probably stay in the US. I guess we might look into it, but more than probably we are going to just be here as needed, and as needs probably going to be the next 2 to 3 years. And now start morphing into what we do in the world on whole, because we have to stop COVID everywhere in order to stop COVID here. And there are a lot of places where they just don't have the kind of resources that they need to fight a pandemic of this scale, or a pandemic of any scale. And kind of to give you an idea of what the picture looks like around the world is, I wanted to share a little bit about my story. I started as a donor to Project C.U.R.E. I donated my mom's hospital bed, and it was after getting super frustrated because I couldn't find anyone who would accept the bed. And I thought that was just ridiculous, because I had this beautiful hospital bed, and you wouldn't even have known that it was used, because even though that sucker had a vinyl mattress, Crazy Janet put a mattress cover on it, right? And it was very clean and very beautiful. And it was great to learn about Project C.U.R.E. But at the time, my kids were super busy and super involved, and volunteering just wasn't an option, even though I wanted to at that point in time. And then a little bit of time passed, and I still kept Project C.U.R.E. in my mind, that I wanted to do something with them. And my son was a sophomore in high school and was looking at some medical fields. And I said, hey, Alex, you need to diversify your resume. Let's go volunteer at Project C.U.R.E. And one thing led to another, and we started volunteering, and I never really saw the picture would expand into much more than helping Alex volunteer and volunteering myself. But the passion developed. And I've got, I think almost everybody, with the possible exception of Justin here, is of the age that we remember Monty Hall and the show Let's Make a Deal. And for Justin's benefit and for our reminder, Monty had this show, and he would ask people to find something in there. At that point, we used to call them pocketbooks, right? And they would dive into their pocketbooks and their jacket pockets. And he'd say, anybody have a Major League Baseball ticket? Anybody have red lipstick or whatever? And you might have it and you'd win what was in the box, right? And then he would always come to you with the deal, and he'd say, in the box you have dinner for 5 at this exotic restaurant, right? And he said, would you trade it for what's behind curtain number 1, right? And you'd have people who would or would not trade, right? Well, imagine if your prize was an all-expense-paid trip to the bowels of Nigeria, right? Probably not your most favorable trade, right? Going to places where you're going to be showering, places that have barely any water, and maybe it's not warm, and you have electricity till 9 o'clock at night and things like that. And certainly in the realm of what my life was like, that wasn't anything I ever saw myself doing. It was, I was the Girl Scout leader that said, didn't get excited when the other camping intensive moms would say, you know what, we might get our low temp badge tonight because it's going to be below 32. And Janet would be looking for the nearest hotel option just in case of emergency, right? So it was a real kind of surprise to me when I just became more and more and more involved with Project C.U.R.E. and developed this passion for working with them. And at the time I was running my own consulting business, and one thing led to another. I started officing with Project C.U.R.E. and I just got more and more involved until I decided to help and become staff, and have never looked back. It's my favorite job I've ever had in my life. I get to meet some really cool people like you guys, and to travel to places I never thought I'd be traveling, and meet some remarkable people. So I wanted to share with you this morning, we have this perspective of COVID, right? I don't know about you, but I go into the grocery store now, and every once in a while I look up and I look around me and I see all these people with masks on. And it just is so surreal to me that I never thought in my lifetime I would be walking around with a mask on. It's like, do we see it? We see it in sci-fi and things like that, and we hear about it and go, how did we end up like this? How is this the circumstance? It's just kind of crazy. What do we do? And fear is there, right? We're all afraid, whether we admit it or not, what level it is or not, no matter how rational we are, everybody's afraid. What happens if I get it? What happens if my mom gets it? What happens if my kid gets it? Can I go to the store? Can I do this? And what strikes me as someone who has now been involved for so many years in the international relief, this is a fear that every single person in a developing country feels every single day about their life. It's not just a pandemic. It's, oh my gosh, what happens if I break a leg? What happens if I get cut in the field and I'm bleeding? What happens if I'm expecting? In this country, expecting is a joyful experience. We celebrate it. We have baby showers and we do all kinds of wonderful things. It can be a death sentence in the developing world. So how we build up strength internationally can not only help do the humanitarian right thing to do, help us protect everybody from a health standpoint, and keep moving forward. So I want to share with you a few different pictures of what life is like in the developing world. We'll come back to that one. These, I had to show you some of my cute favorite little friends. We don't usually take young volunteers at Project C.U.R.E., but these were just some little 8-year-old Boy Scouts that were just too cute to be imagined. But those are some of the nice little friends that I get to meet. And then when I travel internationally, these are the kinds of friends that I get to meet, and quite frankly, scare them to death, because I was probably the first white woman these guys had ever seen, very out in the bowels of Nigeria in that case. And traveling down roads like this, where this is the marketplace, where you get to see fun wildlife like 14-foot pythons, right? If you drive down into the Texas Medical Center and you had to go to emergency, you would see this, right? If you drive into Nigeria, you would see this. You can see, I always like to comment on this photo that I think I'd take my chances with the motorbike before I'd take my chances with that ambulance, right? You'd also see that as a clinic. The clinic is the building in back. The water supply is what's in the front. There's another view of one of the larger hospitals. This is in the major city of Calabar. All open windows, so you don't exactly have a very sterile environment in this type scenario. If you needed to go to the emergency room, you'd probably be taken into a room that looks like this in this country. You'd probably be taken to a front porch in many of the clinics in the countries that we serve. You might find a room with supplies like this on rusted tables and in rusted cabinets. You might be there after Project C.U.R.E. was there and at least get a cleaner setup where the nurse can do your vitals and check you in out in the open air still, but at least with the tools we need to do things like diagnosis and blood pressure. You might be there and again have a little bit better circumstances than the original and a nice bed to lie on where you can be treated. If you had to be admitted in Houston, you'd get a beautiful room like this. Has amenities, even has TV, the bed goes up and down, everything's clean. But more than likely, you'd be in a ward like this with open windows, mosquito netting, and rusty beds with decent mattresses. This is actually not a bad ward. Your private room could look like this. If you had to go to the OR, you'd see a lot of bells, whistles, and equipment in Houston, Texas. This is a simple but pretty good OR in the developing world. Although you do still see problems, and you can see on the left-hand side of the picture that large white tower is a baby warmer, and you've got some nice OR lights, a portable OR light there kind of in the middle. But up at the top, you see a little couple of white things hanging out. That's a ceiling fan right over where the operating table is. Not exactly a great idea. This one's a little better. You see a large stone floor. They have stainless equipment, not the neatest thing. They had rearranged the day I was there in this OR. But they would bring as many as 3 operating room tables in there when they had a physician and do the surgeries all at the same time. Again, good lights, good tables, good cleanliness, able to be there because we had already been there. You see, really good. The kind of quality of lights that you would see in the US, a little bit older generation, but they have that ability to see and to do everything well there. If you're expecting in Houston, Texas, and you were waiting, you would probably have a fetal monitor on you. You'd be in a comfy bed and all things are nice and clean and you're being watched. When I was there in Nigeria, this woman pedaled up by herself on a bicycle, bringing nothing with her except the shift on her back. But she did find a very wonderful woman, Kate, who's next to her in the green t-shirt. They're waiting to take care of her. And the great thing was Kate has the ability to care for her because she had received supplies as the result of a program we called Saving Mothers, Giving Life. And she had the supplies to do a nice safe birth for this young woman who is delivering her 4th child at the age of 20. You might find people like Joyce there as well. Again, we have countries that are filled with very dedicated medical professionals. Joyce was very excited because the table she has her hand on is where she would deliver babies, because it's just a regular exam table but had stirrups and the mommies could be up high and she could walk all around. She was very excited. And she was even more excited about the fact that that was the first pair of scrubs she ever owned, and that enabled her to be recognized as a medical professional and also obviously be clean and have her attire really well, again, donated by that Project C.U.R.E. Saving Mothers, Giving Life program. This is how they keep statistics in the developing world on clinics. And actually happy to say, if you look down under postnatal death, there's 0 at this clinic. So that's very good. But this is the clinic, the way we keep track, and clinics and litanies of posters all over the wall about different programs that had come and gone, because sometimes programs do have to come and go because they have funding or lose interest or whatever happens. That's why one of the most important things we do at Project C.U.R.E is strengthen healthcare systems. We're not in it to be the fairy godparents for the rest of the time, bringing them supplies every 2 weeks or every 2 months. We're there to help make them better. For people like Kate who deliver babies in her clinic, we're going to give her more equipment so she can deliver safely, perhaps be able to charge $1 or $2 for the delivery, and make her center better and serve her community better, so that ultimately they're strong and they don't need us, because she can buy the supplies she needs in country and not count on us. And happily, there are wonderful births like this that do happen as a result of that, when people are in clinics and they have the care they need, that when they need to be referred to a better hospital, they can be. We have beautiful, healthy mamas with beautiful, healthy, pudgy little babies there, all in there for their vaccines on that day. And that's definitely the outcome we're looking for, because when you have a mom pass during childbirth, the chance of her child, even if it's a healthy child, surviving is only 10%. And if mom and baby and everybody doesn't survive, we can't build a strong economy where, again, they can become strong and self-sufficient. And again, another one of our happily ever after pictures, when those babies start growing even healthier and stronger as they go through time. So innately, if you listen to Daniel Pink, and if you think about it, all of us want to be part of something bigger than ourselves, something that matters. And right now, our focal point is all about COVID and making things better and preventing this from getting any worse and preventing it from ever happening again. Project C.U.R.E allows people an opportunity to get involved, whether it's here locally or here internationally, whether you want to travel or drive a truck or sort medical supplies. Anything you want to do, we have the ability to do it. Sometimes it'll be like me, it'll be something you never envisioned yourself doing. Sometimes it's something that you just say, I have a strength at this, I'm just going to use my talent for what I need to be. It is, you know, from personal experience to me, one of the greatest things we do is we help people without knowing we're ever going to hear a thank you, because it's not the thank you that's important. It's knowing that you've just done it. You've taken care of somebody. We, when you come into Project C.U.R.E, like Michelle did on her birthday party, that was a ton of fun. When you come into Project C.U.R.E, you know that when you walk out the door at the end of the day, you've saved somebody's life. You don't know how many somebodies, you don't know who the somebody is, you don't know whether it's a grandma or a child, you don't know what it was, but you do know that everything you did there is going to benefit someone. And the cost to you was a few hours of your life, right? And that's when we come back and we say, what would you trade your life for? Every day we wake up and we make the decision, am I gonna go to work and feed my family and pay the rent and do all those kind of things, or am I gonna lie around in bed, right? Am I going to go volunteer, or am I gonna go have a facial? I don't know. And it's not that facials are bad, facials are great things, love them. But it's nice when we can make that decision to do something bigger than ourselves, something that matters and something that we can do on another level. So if that speaks to you, I'd say let's find a way that we can partner. And I love with the congregation on the whole, we can't wait till we can get to the point that people can come out and volunteer with us in a group. It's a great way to introduce yourself to Project C.U.R.E. There are sort of three tenets, you might say, of us that make Project C.U.R.E work. One is we have to have the people. We have to have the people to help sort the stuff and do the work and pick it up and do everything we do, because we do that on a 1.9% administrative overhead. We must have our volunteers. We have to have the stuff. So if you have any connections to any medical facilities and even physicians' practices, even somebody who, let's say, had some home care and no longer needs it and has a home health bed like my mom did, getting those to Project C.U.R.E, we need this stuff. And of course, we need the financial aspect. And when there is ability to do that, to give something financially, when you can do that, that's a great way to keep us running. When we pivoted in the 1st of March and we started donating things outside of the warehouse, we donated it without regard to whether or not there was funding available to ship that. our usual model is that there's a donor who subsidizes every one of those cargo containers. On the cargo containers, there are about $300,000 to $500,000 worth of stuff on average. And the cost to the donor is about $22,000 on average, whether it's going to Mexico or Sub-Saharan Africa or the Ukraine. All of those are absorbed by a donor. But when you take away the international shipments and you take away the donor sponsoring the containers, and you're just saying to the community, what do you need? We got it, come get it. Or what do you need? We got it, we're gonna drop it off to you. There was no money coming in. And that was a scary thing. But how would you not do it? How would you say, we have, and Michelle has seen it, right? Michelle, 38,000 square feet of boxes and boxes of supplies. How would you hoard it up and not give it out? We gave it all out, and we almost emptied the warehouse of PE. We kept back enough just in case of the situation that's going on right now, but we just gave it out. So that means that we need money to keep us running. And sometimes it's not the running of a specific cargo container to sponsor it, but it's the operational costs. It's the buying the shrink wrap and stuff like that. Funny things happen when you screw up the supply chain like it's been screwed up in the last several months. We get our boxes, for example, through an organization called EPI, Educational Products. And how it works, we've partnered with KDISD, and KDISD PTAs get their school supplies for the kiddos every year, and the parents pay for the school supplies. And they have these beautiful boxes, and we just go pick up the boxes. I mean, literally, the boxes go from EPI to the school. They open them up. They're perfectly perfect. We collect them all. We keep them flat, and we put them in the warehouse and have a year's worth of supplies. But guess what? The kids may not be buying school supplies this year because they have them already at home. And we may have no boxes this year. So think about on the procurement side of things, who do you know? Do you know a box company? Do you know a company that makes something that would do something akin to what the schools do and get rid of those boxes? We can use them, all those kind of things. So here for you guys, anybody who has ideas or wants to talk about it, I'm gonna put this up and I'll share it with Justin as well. You can always reach me directly. You'll find more stories and the videos and all kinds of information on Project C.U.R.E. on the website. No matter what you want to do, whether it's give product, give time, or give financial support. We are open to volunteers right now, very safely, socially distancing on a limited basis. We took a kind of interesting tack this year and took in 30 interns for the summer, and they are helping keeping us running. And about every 2 weeks, we are now able to send out major cargo loads again. And hopefully, if we don't get any worse than we did this week, we'll keep running on stuff like that. So I probably took too much time. Shoot me, Justin. And hopefully that gave you guys a picture of Project C.U.R.E., a little different for those of you who have been with us before. Thank you so much for getting up and having coffee with me this morning, and happy to take any questions for you if we got a couple minutes.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay. It's frustrating. I'm diabetic, and I have these meters, and they're replaced by more current meters, and I don't want to throw them out. I know they're perfectly usable.
Yep, absolutely.
Would that be the kind of thing I could get to Project C.U.R.E.?
Absolutely. And I know how frustrating that is firsthand, because my mother was a very severe diabetic, and boy, when she passed and I cleaned the closet, I think I took out about 15 old meters, right? And meters are easier to get. The thing that's really hard is the test strips. And but we do send them when we can, or we selectively put it, like if a market can't buy a BD test strip, we don't send them a BD meter. So absolutely would love to have those meters from you.
Another question.
And insulin syringes as well. Like if you know someone who has a surplus supply because they were temporarily on insulin or something like that, we will accept those as well.
I have a question. I just had eye surgery. I just had 2 cataracts removed, one from each eye. And I've got some eye shields. And I hate, again, to throw that out.
Yeah, we'll take them.
Okay, that's fine.
So to give you guys an idea, anything that's equipment, if somebody uses crutches, if somebody no longer needs a wheelchair, if they no longer need a porta potty, all those kind of things, and of course all the hospital things, but needles, gauze, syringes, Band-Aids, anything like that, we do ask that right now it didn't expire prior to 2019. They do put crazy expiration dates on everything in this country, so expiration is an issue. Anything like that. So for example, we couldn't use your expired test strips,
Right.
but we can use the meter.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Speaking of expiration, can you use expired medicines, saline, formula, baby formula?
No, we can't. And actually the number one thing to chop off that list is baby formula, because no one can accept or is really accepting expired baby formula. We've tried, even if it's right outside a date, it's just something people don't want to mess with. In terms of medication, it's not legal to redispense prescription medicines. We've always are working on people to see if we can find a new avenue for people to donate that, because there is a lot of waste. You do get into handling issues and contamination issues. So we do have a protocol that we give people about safely discarding them, but we cannot accept the medication. Saline flush syringes is the one thing that we can take in limited amounts. For a while, we were sharing any tube feeding formula that we had with Venezuela. We weren't really shipping it, but we would connect people and say, hey, if you have it, call these guys, they ship into Venezuela. But it is very difficult on things that are temperature sensitive or medication to distribute.
Same with over-the-counter expired medicines. You can't accept those either?
Not expired. Okay. And even one way, we didn't talk about the program, but we do have a program called Kits for Kids. And Kits for Kids is 13 everyday medical supplies that go in a bag, and you can write a message on it, and we distribute those in country. Those are a great way to share supplies with other countries. That's a great bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah project for the kiddos to pack those bags and write the messages on them. But we can't expire. You know, expirations are a really nasty thing these days. We went from, even 5 or 6 years ago, most of our countries would accept expired goods. Now 70% will not accept expired goods. So we're always having to deal with the issue of expiration. If you can't get it in, it can't help anybody, and it's foolish to spend all the effort collecting it, packing it, and the financial nut that it takes to ship it, and then have it get there and have them throw things out. So we have to be very, very, very cautious about what the regulations are in every country and what they'll accept. Now, the one thing I will give you a notice, if you know anybody who's doing mission work, a lot of the missionaries are able to get expired goods in sometimes. So, but even that's cracking down. So sometimes they, you know, they'll approach us and we say, you know, it's up to you, but we can't do it. We won't do it. I lost it. Did we lose? Okay. And that, I think, I'm losing my slide. Sorry, I'm making you all dizzy there. We may have lost Justin.
I'm here.
Oh, there we are. Okay. So on that, looking forward to have everybody back. Michelle had the best idea ever when we've done a few birthday parties. If you ever want to do a birthday party, we can do that in our little meeting room. We can you know, do some volunteering with it, but yeah, I actually have that on my desk right now. It's very cool. You can do that. You also can do donations. You know, you can designate a donation to COVID. One of the groups that are really hurting right now is a lot of the rural hospitals, and it's rural hospitals that we sort of take, you know, we have a lot of little tiny hospitals. We did a big distribution of 2 pallets of gloves to the Texas rural hospital system that they then distributed during COVID. Granbury Hospital, up a little further north than us, Granbury got a couple of one ventilator from us, 1 or 2, I can't remember, 1 I think. We don't think they're not that far off the beaten path, but these are these small communities, and now what's hurting them is in the supply chain, they're having to allocate because there's just so much going out. So if you're a big hospital group and you have a lot of purchasing power, you still may only get 30% of your order, but you're getting a little more priority. When you're a little guy and your regular order is for a small amount and you're getting 30% of it, if you get an outbreak, you are hurting. So those rural hospitals are still really, really struggling. And we want those to continue. We don't want to lose our rural hospitals because they're so important for those communities to have. And hopefully that won't be an outcome of COVID, that we can keep them running. All right. You guys are awesome. Thanks for getting up. I can't wait to see you in person. If you do want to drop off anything, we can do a safe drop off. Again, things changed because all of a sudden things got a lot safer, and we didn't have our outside drop off box outside anymore. Next week we'll resume our outside drop off and hands free. If you have anyone you know who is really hurting, any organization, let's say you have a nursing facility and you feel like they don't have adequate things, please reach out to me and we'll try to cover them with as much as we can to bridge their gaps.
Where are you located?
We're in Spring Branch. We are at the intersection of Kempwood and Bingle, and Warehouse Strip Center. Awesome. Justin, thank you so much for the opportunity.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming out. And we will get back to volunteer with you when we can. So.
Absolutely. And small groups, you know, if you have some younger people and they want to come out, a group of less than 6 people, we are social distancing with the masks. We split them all out. The one thing with these, we've had these 31 young people, interns, and we have gotten so much stuff done. It's been remarkable, and they're having a good time, and knock on everything, everybody's safe. So y'all stay safe, mask up, wash your hands. You've heard it 1,000 times before, but it's the #1 thing we can all do to protect each other.